All right, we passed out the handouts for Proverbs. A couple of things before we get into the lesson. The non-staff adult Sunday school teachers, we're going to start meeting for a few minutes after each service on Thursday night. So if you could, right afterwards, maybe meet me right here up in this corner of the balcony right there. So we'll do that. Just make note of that. And then a quick building update. We had a meeting with the bigwigs, the bigwigs yesterday on the job site. The city manager, the head supervisor of all of the inspectors, the fire marshal, and their posse. So we met with them, and so just to give you an update, we have to we have to do something different with our building permit. We have to totally change it, which is. They're working with us. They're actually being really, really kind and nice. So, but that just means we have to go a different direction for the next few months to finish some things to get to that. And so we're going to be doing that. But if you could pray about that, you say, well, what do you want me to pray about for the building? Here's what you pray about as we go through the process. Oh, by the way, now a blessing out of that is that we might be able to stage the building. In other words, we were trying to, pastor's original plan was to stage it to get into like the auditorium, then maybe finish the second floor or part of the first floor in stages so we could get some occupancy. They're open to that now. So that might be a blessing that comes out of it. So pray about all of that, all that we have to do, and then pray that we get a big sum of money because money would really help us. That's a big issue right now. Not a big issue, but a big determining factor as to when we will get in. And then we didn't mention it, but pray for Mrs. Al, Andrew Al's wife. We sent an email out. She just had a baby. She had a mild heart attack. I don't think it was anything serious. She's doing okay, but also she has they found a lump, and they don't know if it's a tumor or not or whatever it is. So they're doing some tests on her. So do pray for her health if you could remember, please. Good couple serving the Lord. I think you guys were there, right? Did you go? You went to their church, or was that Brother Pichardo? Brother Pichardo, you went to their church right before Christmas. So they're doing a fabulous job there. Okay. To Proverbs we go. We've been going through Proverbs for quite a good time. There is a lot in Proverbs. And we've been talking about the angry man. And we were only going to talk about it for a few weeks. Then I got upset about some things. So we're going to keep going, okay? Some things in the church just made me mad. And I thought, man, I'm going to let you have it. Just kidding. So anger. By the way, as I mentioned last time, I've got a lot of comments about this particular subject, anger. Well, because we all struggle with it, all right? And by the way, if you got upset and you didn't cuss and you didn't get mad, you didn't do anything dumb, okay, this is for you. We're helping all of us tonight, all right? We've already been, I'm just leaving the verse up there, the key verse of Proverbs. It's there all the time. Before we get into this, the two things that I want us to remember in our introduction to anger is, number one, anger is not a sin, okay? It's what you do when you're angry that is a sin. And there is a way to get upset. By the way, there are some things to get upset about. You read some of the stories about the nonsense going on in our country or this or some things. That's something to get upset about, but not to act in a sinful manner, okay? You can control it. So there is an anger that is not a sin. Ephesians, be angry and sin not. And then, of course, constant anger that leads to you acting in ways that are not right is a sign of an immature patience. Immature is an immature Christian because you're impatient. Patience is the opposite of anger, and so if we're not patient, we are not mature, and so we have some ways to go. Now, after we went through a lot of the principles in Proverbs on anger, we started last week, I think the first 3 weeks, we talked about the principles of anger. And then we told you that you had one more week to get ready because we're going to tell you how to overcome it so you can still be angry until we get to that part. We're to that part now, so we're supposed to be working on it. Helps in overcoming anger. Let me just review. I'll read them and you go over it. Never allow yourself to react in your anger. Number 2, be careful who you hang around with. Number 3, you must learn some self-control. Okay? Number 4, you must become a wise man. That means you're switching page, right? Okay, here we go. Number 5, don't always have to have your own way. Number 6, find delight in avoiding confrontations. And then number 7, don't react to others' angers. Seek to diffuse this. And some of the verses we used last week with this kind of segue right into point number 8. Number 8, work on having control of your words. Work on having control of your words. Proverbs 10:19. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin. The word wanteth means lack. So in the multitude of words there wanteth not sin. But he that refraineth his lips is wise. The more we talk, the more opportunity we have to sin. Okay? It's just how it is. So we can, now, some people talk more than others. If you have multiple children, you find out that some talk more than others. How many of you get that? Especially if, let's go this way. If you have multiple daughters, okay, Hannah is so much better now. She's an adult now, God bless her. When she was a little girl, she just talked and talked and talked and talked. And if it's, one of those times I'm just driving with her, it's like, that's an easy conversation. You get in the car, she's got it covered from there. I remember one time we're driving the car and she's, and the thing about ladies use 20,000 words a day and men use half that amount. And I'm like, Hannah, I think you've exceeded your amount. Save some of those words for when you get married, okay? Dad's ears are tingling. Let's play the silent game. But it's not. Some people talk more than others. I'm just talking about in situations. You just have to talk through it and just have to keep talking. That makes situations worse. And the more we talk through the situations, the more we're going to get ourselves into trouble. James chapter 1 and verse 19 says, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath." It's amazing. He talks about being swift to hear and slow to speak, and then he throws in slow to wrath. What does that have to do with it? Okay? The primary way that we act out in anger, it starts with our words. It always does. That's the number one tool that anger uses. Now, some people get violent when they get angry. Okay? And by the way, if you have that problem, you need to get right with God on that right away. There is no excuse for that. Okay? And getting physical and this and that, you need to work on that. Not work on it. Let me throw this back. That's too kind. You need to stop it. Okay? Remember how many remember the council clip we used to play in church? We got to play that again. It's not Christian, but it's Bob Newhart, and they're in there, and the lady's going for counsel. He goes, "I'll help you with this, okay? All right, ready? 2 words. Stop it." She's like, "Aren't you good?" "No, stop it." Okay? So here's my counsel to you. Stop it. It's wrong. And it all usually starts with our words, right? We just start talking. And so that's why James mentions it. That's part of the whole situation. The more we talk, the more there will be anger. By the way, some people don't know when to just let go and be quiet. It's like, all right, we're done with it. Just it's not helping. As I mentioned in one of the previous weeks, all of us at one time or another, in a situation, I'll use the nice word, we've said something, and as soon as the words come out of our mouth, we're like, uh-oh, that was a wrong thing to say. Can I get a witness? That just made things worse. And it's like, can I grab those words? Sorry, they're done. And so we need to be very careful about that. We talked about last week one of the ways you don't react to anger, you seek to diffuse it. A soft answer turneth away wrath. Sometimes it's not the multitude of our words, it's the tenure of our words. And so we need to watch out with that. Don't always have to have the last word. If you have a situation, state your opinion, state it kindly, and then let the other person talk, and that's kind of hard to do. If we're not careful in a conflict, and this happens, and this is why people have relationship problems, you go from dealing with the situation to going after the other person. That never helps. Listen, why did you do this? Well, what is this all about? Well, I think we should do this. Well, I think we should do this. Well, you're an idiot. That had nothing to do with what you're talking about. Do you understand the difference? Well, here's why I feel we shouldn't do that. Well, here's why I feel we should. Well, you're stupid. Were you born yesterday? Now we're attacking the person. You always. You never. So let's make sure we don't do that, because that's where anger really steps it up, and that's where relationship is destroyed. I thought when you're trying to discuss an issue, you're trying to get clarity on it. You're trying to work it out. You're trying to fix it, not destroy the other person. Very, very careful. That's what happens so often. That's where real problems come from. The issue is no longer the issue now. Now the person has become the issue, and now to them, you're the issue. And so it's become, as they say, it's personal. The problem is set aside, and now it's a personal attack. That's where the problems will come from. We mentioned that self-control must be learned. But I want to show something to you, and I got the whole slew of verses there from James chapter 3. The book of James tells us that the key to self-control is learning to control our tongue. It's the whole key. We see the verses there. And as I mentioned before, why is that true? And we're going to read the verses. I'm not just making this up. But why is it that James is saying that your tongue and how you use your tongue is a key to self-control? Because as I mentioned, the tongue is the number one weapon that anger uses to display itself and to damage others. It starts with words. Look at James chapter 1. Let's just read through it. And in verse 1 there, it's on your sheet. It says, "My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation." That verses mean don't be a leader or a teacher if you are, not saying you shouldn't, but if you are, realize that you're under a higher scrutiny. Then he says, verse 2, "For in many things we offend all." Some people, that's their life verse. They stop right there. For many things we offend all. That's not supposed to be a life verse, all right? "If any man offend not in word, the same as a perfect man." Perfect is mature. "And able also to bridle the whole body." He is saying that all of us in some ways can offend others. But he's saying the person that doesn't offend in words, they're a mature individual. Not only are they a mature individual, they have the control to control their entire body, to bridle the whole body. Self-control. That's why we said a person that has addiction issues, that type of thing, they're in deep sin and they can't get over it. They usually have anger issues too. Because they have a lack of self-control. That's why they're in some of these situations. And that lack of self-control, normally the number one way it'll manifest itself is in anger. But he's saying here, if you can control your words, that is the key to having the self-control to bridle your whole body, to control yourself. Now, why is that? Because I think the tongue is the hardest one to control. Can I get a witness? Even people that don't talk, sometimes when they do talk, the few words they say can stir up strife. So we need to learn that. And it's all tied to anger. Verse number 3. "Behold," he gives some pictures here. "Behold, we put bits in the horse's mouth, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body." Horses are huge animals. You know, you say, oh, they're very under control. When we go up to Washington, our in-laws, they all have horses, and they ride them and they control them. But there's been a couple times. One time when Jessica was a little girl, I don't know what the horse did, but it ran her through a tree branch and ripped her clothes, knocked her off, the whole 9 yards. And then who fell off last time? Was that you, Ryan? Who was it? You fell off again? Hey, maybe that's a sign from God. You should quit riding horses, Jessica. But yeah, the horse threw her off. I don't blame them, to be real honest with you. But you control that. They're massive animals, and they're very strong. How do you control? They control them with the bit in their mouth. That's the steering wheel. Now, I know there's training involved with that. This strong animal can be controlled and directed by their mouth. We can control our direction in our life if we just had the self-control to control our mouth. That time you want to say something, right? It's like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Sometimes you ought to pat yourself on the back if you don't say it. Other times you say it and you need to kick yourself, okay? But controlling ourselves, not offending others. He talked about that in the second verse. Anger does the opposite. Anger doesn't care. Anger does not care. I'm telling you what I think all the time. If you don't like it, that is just how I am. That doesn't make it right. I heard that excuse. Well, you just don't understand. That's just how I am. That's just how I roll. Well, you're rolling the wrong way. Okay? Roll the opposite direction. No, I'm just being honest. No, you're being rude. People always, you're being honest. Are you really honest all the time? So if I'm walking in the mall and I see some lady in a dress I think is hideous, like, excuse me, man, I'm always honest. That dress is hideous. Try that and see what happens. You get a shoe upside the head. We just don't know how to control ourselves, and we're rude, and we try to, well, that's just how I am. Listen, can I tell you something? That's just how I am too. And that's just how you are. And so what do we got to do? We got to control it. Because once we allow ourselves to be loose that way, we'll be loose every other way. The mouth shows the direction we're going to go. Verse 4, behold also the ships, which though they be so great, they're huge, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. How many of you ever been on a huge ship? Now, anybody ever been in the Navy? Daniel, were you in the Navy? Were you on an aircraft carrier? Which one were you on? First Daniel. What were you on? Great. Now, Jerry, you were on the first one ever built, right? And it was an aircraft carrier. It had those biplanes, didn't it? Just kidding. I'm not saying the guy's old, but his Social Security is single digits, if you know what I'm saying. So, what were you on, Brother Jerry? Coral Sea. You remember when we had the naval base here at Gethsemane? We had a bunch of Navy men. One of the holidays they were off, and I wasn't never in the service, but they took me down there, and we went on the USS Peleliu. They're big, but when you're on those things, they're massive. They are massive. It's like a city. And that huge ship, now, the rudder that directs that ship is pretty big, but in comparison to the size of that ship, it's not that big. Yeah. And that's what he's saying here. You have these huge ships. How is the direction of that ship determined? That little helm or the rudder. That directs it. I remember years ago I was on vacation. I was up with my father-in-law. We were watching something on the History Channel, and it was the story of the Bismarck. The Bismarck was the Germans' number one, I think it was a destroyer or battleship. And it sunk England's top aircraft carrier in less than 5 minutes. The hood. Just done. So the Allies made it their priority to sink the Bismarck. And so the whole thing went through this, how they were chasing it down. And they chased it down, and they almost had them caught one time, and then it got away. And they made a mistake and let it get away. And it got away from them enough to where it was going to be in safe waters, that they had some protection and they had some ships to help before they could get to it. So what they did is, the only thing they had on one of their ships was some old World War I airplanes that had these, not quite so good torpedoes. They were World War I. This is World War II. And so they sent them out. What they found out is that the destroyer's guns were not really geared towards those type of planes. They were geared for the Flaster planes, and they couldn't shoot them down. So these World War I planes went, and they all dropped a few torpedoes. It was their last-ditch effort. They're like, and they went, and nothing happened. They didn't blow it up or anything. They couldn't really, but they were just trying to do something. And then they noticed something on the radar, that for some unforeseen reason, the Bismarck, which was on its way to safety, flipped a U-turn. Well, what they come to find out was one of those World War I plane torpedoes actually hit the rudder and did just enough damage to turn it so it made a U-turn and came right back towards them. And then they laid into it and they sunk it. That huge ship, that little rudder. See, God is saying that our tongue is like that. Our tongue can determine the direction of our life. How many people have been ruined by the things they say? The things that their mouth gets them into. We got to be very, very careful. And primarily in anger. We say so many things and we get in so much trouble. Look at verse 5. He compares it directly to the tongue. Even so, the tongue is a little member. Remember the picture of the ship. And boasteth great things. By the way, your tongue thinks the greatest person in the world is you, right? Let me tell you all about me. I don't want to hear about you. I want to hear about me, okay? But it boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. Matter is like the word, is like fuel. You know, you ever see somebody you're just adding fuel to the fire. We talked about that earlier, how a person that doesn't have anger, they diffuse the situation, but a person that does have anger problems, they take a situation and they make it worse. You ever know somebody like that? When you're around them, they're always causing more trouble. If there's a situation, they make it worse. They just can't be quiet. They just can't control themselves enough. They can't control their anger enough to keep from making the situation worse. That's what he's talking about. That's our tongue. James doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about it, by the way. Verse 6, and the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire of hell. Wow. Defiles your whole life. Verse 7, for every kind of beast, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It's an unruly evil full of deadly poison. You ever been to a circus or SeaWorld? I think they're getting rid of the animal shows at SeaWorld. How many of you heard that? Animal rights activists got to them. Okay, why else would you go there? Okay, if you don't have dolphins jumping there spitting water at people, why would you go? Okay, and big killer whales. They train those animals, and those animals have a very wild nature. Every now and then they snap out of it, and they do something good, but they have a wild nature. But yeah, with enough training, you can train them. There years ago, we went to the circus, and we took the kids there, and they had the lions, and they had the 3 circles, and they had the lion tamer. And here comes the lion out. The lion had a bad attitude, but he had a whip up on the thing. So he gets the animal up on the ring. And then he brings in another one. Now, this animal over here, he's got a bad attitude. Every time this guy's concentrating on the other one, he kind of steps down. You know what I'm saying? Like, are you looking at me? And he'll turn, whoop, right back up. As long as he kept beating them and they trained those things, they could pretty much control them. James is saying, you know what? With enough training and enough effort, you can kind of keep wild animals under control, and you can tame them to a certain extent. He goes, but not the tongue. That's a tough one. Now, don't say, see, James says you can't do it, so I'm just going to let her fly. No. The point is, to the degree that you control your tongue is to the degree that you can control your life. We're never going to be perfect at it because we're never going to be perfect at anything. But you know what? We can get it under control enough to keep ourselves out of a lot of situations, just like they tame the animals. Verse 9, therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. The same mouth that in church says, praise God, curses out somebody else's that cuts them off on the way home from church. Right? Can I get a witness? I just love Jesus. And we get out of the house and we're yelling at everybody we see. How does that happen? We're almost like emotionally schizophrenic. Verse 10, out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. Reminds me of that story in Judges, where it's a story, I think, of Micah, the priest, and the one lady, she comes home, someone stole her God, and I think her son stole it, and her son gave it back to her. And in one verse it said she was cursing that her God got stolen, and then next verse she was praising the Lord. Okay? By the way, it seems like Christians are very comfortable with that. Our new brand of Christian, not ours, but the new brand of Christianity is very comfortable with like slipping in and out of the world and slipping out in and out of Jesus. Well, by the way, we have a morality of convenience. Whatever. Hey, look, when I'm in church, I love Jesus, but hey, if I'm with the guys, we'll have a few brews and do all this. You can do that, but that's not Christian. And by that's not church either. I'm getting sick and tired, and this has nothing to do with this, but I feel I need to vent. I'm sick and tired of these new pastors talking about how much they drink and having beers to their church members. Go get a real job. Be honest. Okay, if you can't see that in the Bible, if you're gonna, it's ridiculous. But anyhow, we'll talk about anger because I got angry about that. But it was righteous indignation. I found, somebody, one of the neighbors 2 years ago was upset with our parking situation, and he told some pastor, and the pastor emailed me, hey, I just want to let you know this, I'm praying for you, blah, blah, blah. So I went to his website, and he's like, hey, what do I like to do in my off time? I like to hang around with the people of the church, have a few brews, and do this. I'm like, nutcase. Okay, I'm violating my own principles. Let's get back to the Bible. See, that was me. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. Just kidding. Doth a fountain send forth at the same time sweet water and bitter? Listen, if it's a clean water fountain, it's a clean water fountain. If it's not clean, it's not clean. It can't give you both. Once it's polluted, it's polluted. If it's pure, it's pure. Can't give you like a good drink and then a bad drink and then a good drink. It's either one or the other. But we're so comfortable with our tongue being like that. Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh. It just can't do it, okay? It just doesn't work. Let me give you a couple thoughts here. Look, we're done with that. Look at now, let me give you some other helps in overcoming anger that aren't from Proverbs, okay? This is such an important subject because anger is so destructive. It really is. It's a killer. And we need to get this, under control. No, you need to kill it, really, but yeah, get it under control. Let me give you a couple thoughts. These are all verses on non-proverb verses. Number one, justified anger is controlled anger. Now that sounds like oxymoron? It just sounds like a misnomer. Like, what do you mean, anger controlled? You can't control your anger. I didn't cuss when I was talking about the drinking pastors. I didn't kick anything over. I slashed their tires, but that was something different. Just kidding. Okay? No, you get upset. Listen, it's controlled. In other words, the actions you are taking in a situation that you are justifiably upset about are controlled actions. See, what happens, we get upset about something, we think, there you go, I have justification now to act out of control. No, you don't. You never have justification in the Bible, unless you can show me something, justification for out of control action. You can't. There isn't. So justified anger is controlled. And what does that mean? I already said it. We're not reacting out of anger. We're choosing to be upset, and we're choosing how we're acting in that anger. We're not letting the anger control how we act. Even though we're upset about something, justifiably so, we seek to take the right course of action. That takes some control. Because we are choosing, we can control how that anger is directed. You see, look, the right kind of anger can be productive, like fire. Fire can be helpful when controlled, can be used to produce things, whether in a industrial setting, a fireplace, whatever. Cooking, heat, that is controlled fire. It's very helpful. But fire that's not in control can burn down houses, forest fire can kill people. It's not what fire is it controlled or is it not controlled? When you control that fire and put it into profitable uses, it's like a knife. You put it in the hand of a murderer, it's a bad thing. You put it in the hand of a skilled surgeon, it's a good thing, okay? And so that's what anger is. We control it. Number two, don't let anger fester. Deal with it right away. Now, this is more in a relationship type situation. Don't let anger fester. Deal with it right away. That's the flip side of the Ephesians 4:26 verse. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. If you're angry, deal with it quickly, especially in a relationship. You never want to they say you never want to go to bed angry. Why? You probably won't sleep. Because the longer you let it go, the more opportunity that anger has to result in bitterness towards somebody. Some people said, fine, if you can't let the sun go down upon your wrath, I'll get angry in the morning, so I have all day. Okay, that's not really what the verse is saying. Don't twist it. No, deal with it. How many relationships have been destroyed because in an anger situation, people have had a confrontation, they didn't deal with it correctly, now they're done. And the longer it goes, the harder it is for them to get that fixed. Protracted anger causes bitterness. And by the way, let me say this about bitterness. When you become bitter towards somebody, bitterness spreads. I could have a situation, Brother Rawl, and I love everybody else in the church, but that guy irritates me to no end. And I'm not testifying now, although, maybe. And I'm like, well, it's just a me and him thing, but I'm not going to get over it. I'm done with him. Well, see, now I'm becoming a bitter person. It spreads. I'll start having issues with everybody. By the way, I'll have issues with my spouse, my family, because that's what bitterness does. Bitterness makes you a bitter person. When you're a bitter person, it spoils how you look out of life. That's what Hebrews tells us. Hebrews uses a word that's used of like looking out of a dirty window. You look out of a dirty window, you see things, but you're not seeing it clearly. You might see things that aren't there. Okay? That's what bitterness does. You've got to deal with it right away. What are your options when there's a situation with somebody? A couple things. You can either get the situation resolved if it's a disagreement with an individual. Okay? You eventually got to get the deal. I just think that they owe me this, or this is this, and they should have done this for me, and I do that. You try to resolve it with them. Now, what's the Christian way if they don't want to if they were technically wrong and they don't deal with it? What is really the Christian thing? Christian thing may be to just let it go. Square the field. Well, I think they owe me that. Then they don't feel that way for the sake of Christianity. Let it go. But deal with the situation. Or get forgiveness when needed. If you did something wrong to them and you're the cause of the whole mess, maybe you need to get forgiveness. Okay? Or give forgiveness when needed. Well, they never came to me and asked for forgiveness. Here's what you do. Give it to them anyhow. People don't have to come to you. I'm upset with that person. You know what? If they never come to you, say, you know what? It's not that big a deal. I'll let it go. It's not a big deal. By the way, sometimes people do things and they're not even aware, or they don't even know that it bothered you and it got on you and you fester something. Give forgiveness, but if it's not something they know you're upset about, don't go tell them. I'll only let you know something. I forgave you. For what? I remember a guy came one time to my office. He goes, I want to talk to you. This is 4 or 5 years ago. I said, okay. He said, I want you to forgive me because I had a bad spirit towards you. Now, I didn't know he had a bad spirit towards me. I'm like, what about? And it's like, and it was a personality thing. I'm sorry if I did anything. If I didn't mean to do that. He goes, yeah, I understand. That's fine. He goes, I just, one day. And then after he said he wanted to ask for forgiveness, he criticized me for 20 minutes. Yeah, you're this, and you're this, and you're this, and you're this. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I thought he was coming to ask for forgiveness. I just let him talk for 20 minutes. I wasn't going to argue with him. I'm like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't mean to. Sorry, And I'm fine with the guy. I hate him, but, I'm fine. Maybe I ran over him on accident one time, but that was accident. He happened to walk in front of my car. But, it's not a big deal. He obviously felt something there, and I wanted him to feel comfortable. So I'm like, I'm okay. I'm sorry I did that, and, hey, I'm fine. We're good. I was joking. We are good. And then also, the last thing is this. Give it to God if it's out of your hands. I want to get this right with that person, but they don't want to get it right. They don't want to have anything to do. You know what you do? You say, Lord, in my heart, I forgave them, and I understand it. There's probably something going on, and in my mind, it's over. Just let it go. Why? Because you know what happens if you don't do that? Here's what happens. You get bitter. They don't know what's going on, and you're the one that's getting the ulcer. You're the one that's sitting there with the clinch. You're the one that's just thinking about it. It's getting on you. They're sleeping at night. That's where the bitterness comes in. By the way, someone has said bitterness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. It's not going to work. Okay, then you become a angry person. Over the years, we've had teenagers, and some they struggle with certain things, and we'll talk to them about it, particularly in the school if they're struggling with some things. And that some of them are like, it goes back to an issue with some unresolved conflict in their family. Maybe the dad wasn't in the home, and they had something in their heart, and that affects everything. That's affecting every part of their life, and it's making them an angry person. Okay, so always deal with it. Don't hang on to it. And it's 8:00, and let's pray.